Welcome back to another episode of the Draft Dynasty Podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Jeremy Betz, and I'm joined, as always, by my good buddy Andrew Wilbar. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. We usually take kind of a league-wide approach to this show, but there's some interesting things going on across the NFL. The trade deadline's passed, and so teams have kind of really established who they are, and we want to talk about that a little bit. And we want to do it from one team's perspective because we're fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We do a lot for Steel Curtain Network. I'm sure most of the listeners of this show are probably, transferred over from the Steel Curtain Network as well. So, Andrew, this is going to be fun. I think there's a lot of interesting things we can approach with this, and we're going to kind of put on our GM and head coach and ownership hats here and take this thing apart and see what we're going to do with it. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be fun. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to talking of a little bit of everything, really. When you're general manager for a team, you've got to deal with everything, every little nook and cranny. It's not just one aspect, but that's the great thing about being an NFL GM. You've got, each sport has its own thing. Like, the manager is so important in baseball, right? Or you could even argue the owner because he's got to have the money, right? Because you don't have a salary cap. But then you also have, in the NBA, the things have changed with the salary cap, and you get, as long as you can end up paying this, the luxury tax. Sometimes the ownership matters there as well. But each area, like, it matters a certain bit. But with the NFL, the GM is more important, I think, than any other sport.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many angles you have to approach this thing. I mean, you've got the salary cap to deal with. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, right? It's how much money are you being given by the ownership and your organization that you can work with. And I'm not going to pretend I know how to manage a baseball team or an NBA team or something like that. That's outside of what I would say is like my area of knowledge, if you will. I'm not even going to say I'm an expert in this because I'm not. I haven't been on an NFL team, but I think the ideas that we talk about on this show, roster building, player development, all of those good things, those are pretty, accessible thought processes for people like us who have never set foot inside an NFL organization or front office. And when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're trying to do this a really unique way. You don't see this very often, where a team is straddling that line between staying competitive in a year where they're probably not going to win a Super Bowl, right? But they're not going to just throw in the towel because that's not going to happen. They want to win games. They want to win as many games as they can. They want to go to the playoffs. They want to win a playoff game if they can. They're not going to beat like the best teams in the league to get to a Super Bowl when you're talking about in their conference, even unless a miracle happens. And maybe that's why you do push through this and say, maybe miracles can happen. A miracle could happen in our conference this year. But as we sit here today, the type of roster that they have, the holes that they have, the age of the quarterback, how he's playing, like all of these things factor into a team that doesn't appear to be in the running for, excuse me, a championship in 2025. But despite all that, they're not throwing in the towel. They're not selling all their high-priced players for big draft picks and punting on this season and moving into the future. They want to win now and win this next offseason in Pittsburgh, in the draft, and in free agency. How can they do that, Andrew? How can they feasibly do this? Is this the approach you would have taken from the start of the year? And if not, like, how would you have maybe changed things to this point, knowing that we can't?
My perspective has always been, if you cannot win the Super Bowl, that's not really a feasible goal. That if you're in a situation where you have an opportunity to capitalize on a rebuild, you take advantage of that. And so my philosophy would have been, not to say that Aaron Rodgers hasn't exceeded my expectations, because he has. he's done way better than what I expected. But my philosophy from the beginning was don't worry about bringing in a vet. If you can bring back Justin Fields at a relatively cheap price, you do it. But other than that, don't go out. Don't draft a quarterback in a bad quarterback class. Don't waste high assets on a Shedeur Sanders or anyone like that. Just be bad for a year and then reset the timeline on everything. And hopefully you have another competitive roster that can compete for a Super Bowl before some of these guys like TJ Watt are at the end of their career. So that was kind of my perspective on it, and philosophy really hasn't changed on that. I think the only thing that might have changed is the draft landscape with the quarterbacks, which we still really don't know because we don't know the draft order yet. But with a month of football left to play, I think you have a decent number of quarterbacks that could be potential first-round picks, but none of which have solidified themselves as like the guy in this class, which maybe that helps a team like the Steelers that are picking lower, or maybe can muster a mini trade up to go and get a guy without selling the farm. But ideally, I would have liked to have seen the Steelers been picking really, really high, use some of their compensatory picks, which they might not even get anymore, to use to go up and then get their quarterback of the future, get a premier guy in this upcoming draft class.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, let me ask you this then. If you so you would have kept the TJ Watts and Cam Haywards that you had on your roster. You just wouldn't have addressed the quarterback spot with a veteran, like ride with Mason Rudolph or whatever, to where it's like, okay, we tried a little bit, but not like we're so it's not like a clear tank job, right? Because the Steelers probably talented enough to win 7, 8, 9 games without the Aaron Rodgers. When you look at it across the rest of it. So, but would that have been your take then, to keep those guys? You're not like selling TJ Watt at the trade deadline.
No, we're not trading TJ Watt at the trade deadline. I mean, there might be a couple pieces that you would have considered moving on from, but they'd have been playing at a better level. I think Patrick Queen, he's playing better now, but earlier in the year was struggling a little bit more, especially in coverage. So if there was a guy like that, you could have gotten some assets for something like that, but still keeping the guys. You don't trade a guy like Cameron Hayward just because he's been a Steelers whole career and he's a big aspect of the franchise. He's a captain. And then TJ is really the face of this franchise.
Ironically, the guys you probably would trade at the trade deadline if you were going to sell would be like Jalen Ramsey, who they traded for, right? And maybe Minkah Fitzpatrick if they had never made that move. Like if the Steelers were not playing for 2025 at all and only playing for the future, they would have asked for draft compensation for the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade instead of player compensation. Instead, they go the player compensation route. They swap a couple picks at the end of the draft for this next year, and they're good to go. So they totally took the approach of like, you know what, we don't know what's going to happen in 2025 outside of us, but for us, we're going to put together as competitive a roster as we can from top to bottom and see what happens. And like, it's admirable, right? It's definitely not like what most teams do, which is tank it and go. We talk about the New York Jets right now. They shipped off Quinnen Williams. They shipped off Sauce Gardner. They've got 5 first-round picks over the next 2 years. And they've already done this before, Andrew. And this is why I think it's unique to be a Steeler fan, is like you see teams across the league that do this stuff and it doesn't matter because they drafted good players when they did this the last time. Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams were part of those draft classes, and it never worked for the franchise to get to the playoffs, to be a winning team. It just never worked. And that to me goes back to obviously ownership and the front office and the hiring of coaches and all that. The Steelers don't have some of those things to worry about. So can you, like, even if it may not be the exact way you would have done it or I would have done it if I were just walking into team A, right? Can you understand the Steelers' perspective on it and the way that they made it work?
I can. I think that any coach or front office or ownership they are going to, I mean, they know the people better than anybody else. They know their coaches. They know who they have in the room. And when you develop relationships with someone, you develop trust as well. If the coach says we have a team that can win, you're going to trust them. And if they say we need this piece, sure. But it's also human nature to sometimes think that we are capable of a little bit more than what ideally is going to happen, especially in the area of sports. Sometimes our pride can get in the way. And I don't want to say that's the only issue with the Steelers, but I think sometimes the Steelers maybe thought they had a little bit more talent in-house than what they thought. Although I do think they have more talent than what the national media gave them credit for. I also don't think that they are at the point of the elite level that I think sometimes the ownership thinks they are. And they're satisfied. They believe you can just have a good enough season as long as you're hot at the right time. You've got enough. You can make it work once you get to the playoffs. And it doesn't really work that way anymore, at least not too often.
I think what the biggest thing as a fan is like, we just want clear direction from a team. And when you're straddling this line, like the Steelers have tried to do, it feels like you don't have clear direction all the time. Now, again, this is why I wanted to talk about this, because it's a little bit unique. The Steelers walked into a situation this offseason where they were like, you know what? We've got guys under contract that are kind of the foundational pieces, and we need to extend a couple guys like TJ Watt specifically. But otherwise, like, our core talent is in the building. We're going to have a draft class coming up and free agency, obviously, where we can round out some of the rough edges of the roster. But we don't need to do a whole lot of spending in order to be that competitive team that we want to be. We don't have to go over the top this way. And what we can do in that situation then is compile draft picks for next year based on the contracts that we're losing from guys in free agency this year. We're going to have a lot of guys going to new teams on big contracts. You had Dan Moore Jr. You obviously had Justin Fields. Russell Wilson goes to a new team. So you're starting to sit there, and Omar Khan tipped his hand early. He said, you know what, we're playing this comp formula thing for 2026, and we're going to play this game. And so the Steelers did that. Every move that they made has been with the thought of, does this help us now without jeopardizing our ability to have an absolute haul of draft picks in 2026? So a very unique approach from a team that hasn't done this before. And it seems to be to go all in on the quarterback of the future. And as with any draft class at this point last year, we were hyping up this quarterback class. Everybody was, not us specifically necessarily, but everybody was hyping up this quarterback class. It could be generational. You get to November here, and the whole thought process has changed from that perspective, but the Steelers still have all these picks and the ability to move up for a guy if they want to. And so I think that this makes it very interesting because it's different than what most other teams would do when they're approaching a season where they're like, you know what, we don't have our quarterback of the future. We still are looking to get that guy, but despite that, we're not going to throw away the season for it.
Yeah, I think the comp picks are going to be interesting just because of who isn't playing right now. With Russell Wilson being the most notable one, what's that comp pick going to turn out to be, if anything? So that's going to be a big question in terms of how much capital the Steelers have to move up. But I think, again, it goes back to, and we'll probably get into this more as the show goes on, but this class, there is still some depth to it. It's not top heavy, but I think it's going to boil down to the same that happens every year. The top quarterbacks are going to go early, and then the rest are going to drop off and not go early. You don't see that many quarterbacks that just go late first round. Jackson Dart last year was kind of an exception. And we thought Shedeur Sanders could be in that conversation late first, early second. You saw some go in the second. But typically, if a team sees you as a bona fide starter, they're going to do whatever they have to do to get you. They're not going to just wait around for for them to fall to you. So if you're the Steelers, if you have a quarterback, let's say Lenora Sellers ends up declaring for this draft, and he's in that 15 to 20 range on most people's boards, which most are either going to have them super high or super low, like off their board.
Yeah.
But if the nationwide consensus in mock drafts is 15 or 20 and people are mocking him to the Steelers or whatnot, and he's the guy the Steelers want, most likely you're not going to take him at 20. You either have got to trade up for him, and you're going to trade up to 10, 12 at minimum and get him, or he's going to fall really far, maybe not as far as Shador did last year, but he's not going to go first round, and you can just let him fall to you later on. Like that's the whole thing, that picking where the Steelers are likely going to be picking around pick 20, where we anticipate where it's been the last few years. It's not an ideal spot to take a quarterback in, because the good ones are going to be gone, or even the potentially elite ones are going to be gone. And then all the other ones that people have hesitations about, it's just everyone's gun shy. It's just a game of chicken. So it being at 20 doesn't really do you a whole lot of good for a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our talk as fans this whole offseason was you're going to have to, or not this whole offseason, I shouldn't say that. Like, since the start of this formula coming into play here, was you need to get up into the top 10 to go get your quarterback. You need to take the Bills route from 2017 or 2018, whenever they went up and grabbed Josh Allen, where they made multiple trades. They made a pre-draft trade to get up from like 22 to 12, and then they jumped up from 12 to 7 during the draft to land Allen. That was kind of like, this is what the pathway that you would probably need to take to try to get up there and grab one of these guys. And at that time, we were thinking Cade Klubnik, we were thinking Garrett Nussmeier, we were thinking Lenore Sellers, we were even thinking maybe some Arch Manning, all these guys in this conversation, along with the Fernando Mendoza, and other guys that we had on the edge of our radar, like Sam Levitt. And, you had mentioned Dante Moore as a guy to watch. And so there's so many guys that are like totally off the spectrum now, as far as like guys that you're going to want to jump up and take in the top 10. Those guys just haven't worked out. And so now it's gone down to like 4 guys, maybe, right? 4 or 5 guys, if they all declare. And things got a little murkier from the quarterback perspective in the draft. So before we go to break, let's do this. Let's kind of set this up. The Steelers are going to have about $45 million in cap space in 2026. They're also going to have 12 picks. Now, where all of those picks are remains to be seen. It sounds like they're locked into 3 third-round picks with the comp pick for Dan Moore Jr., right? A 4th-round pick is going to come back for Justin Fields. As long as he finishes out this week, I think that he's locked into the 4th-round pick, if I'm correct on that. And you're going to have 2 seconds, and you're going to have your 1st-round pick. So within the first 4 rounds, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks in the first 4 rounds. That's going to be your ammo, right, to try to get up. And then you might have to dig into 2027 to a degree as well, especially if you want to fill out the rest of the roster in 2026 and not just have the quarterback be your only high pick. You're going to want to keep 1 or 2 of those 3rd-round picks, and you might need to dig into the 2027 draft. The other thing playing into this, Andrew, is that there are 3 teams now that will be picking ahead of them, and a team that will probably be picking after them in the Los Angeles Rams that all have multiple 1st-round picks this next year. So how do they make that work to get up into the range? All of that plays into this. It gets very murky really quick when you start to look at now what this quarterback class is. So with that in mind, let's take our break. And when we come back, let's figure this thing out, Andrew. Let's figure out how to move forward. We've set it up, and then we'll figure out what we should do. Like, if you and I are GM, what we should do to save the Steelers, get their franchise quarterback while keeping the path that they've built for themselves, because we're not going to change that, intact for 2025. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Jeremy Betz, Andrew Wilbar. It's all Steelers today. It's a lot of fun. We set it up in the first half of the show. We talked about philosophy. We talked about where they're at and the direction that they've chosen for themselves. 2025, staying competitive. 2026, all in for the quarterback. The quarterback class has changed. The compensation you're going to have to pay. There's going to be some competition there now. So, Andrew, let's open it up here, okay? The 2025 season is over. Let's say best case scenario happened for the Steelers, all right? Because they already decided not to trade anybody away, and they already decided not to trade for anybody at the trade deadline. So everything's still here. All the picks that we're assessing are still here. Best case scenario, the Steelers made the playoffs. They won their playoff game. They're picking 25th. Let's just say 25th is the pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, all right? So this is what you're sitting at the end of the year. How are you approaching this offseason, given what we know now about the quarterback class, the competition ahead of them, 4 quarterbacks, the draft order? Like I'm looking at Tankathon right now. They got Pittsburgh picking at 20, like a wild card round loser, but say they lose in the divisional round, put them at 25, and get up ahead of some of these other teams that we know are going to be picking up there. How do you approach this? Just start us off.
I mean, first you got to look and see, like, would there be any just immediate solution in free agency? And I mean, you're not going to find anything. Daniel Jones will most likely get brought back by Indianapolis. I expect them to sign him to an extension. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, maybe you get an extra year out of him if he comes back. But like we talked about before, like, I'm not confident in him wanting to come back just to be that veteran mentor to a young quarterback. Like if he's coming back, he's wanting to win. He's not going to want the Steelers to draft a quarterback, and he's not going to be happy if they do. So I don't think that's a good situation if you bring him back, if you're going to draft a quarterback. If not, you're just putting it off for another year and pretty much telling TJ Watt, just go end your career without any chance of a Super Bowl at that point, because you're not dedicated to winning. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, Malik Willis is a free agent. I think he's proven enough as a backup to, in his time in Green Bay to maybe get another chance somewhere, but it's not going to be without competition. He's not just going to be handed a starting job. So there's nothing in free agency. Kyler Murray, we'll see if he becomes available. But, I mean, he hasn't done enough in Arizona to make me think that he can win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't think he's a bad quarterback, and he's good for fantasy when he's healthy. But in terms of real-life clutch situations, he's not the most clutch quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he would be the best fit for the Steelers. He'd be good for maybe short term. So I think it boils down to the draft when it's all said and done. You look at the in-house options. We haven't gotten to see your Ohio State boy. Why is the name slipping me?
Will Howard, yep.
Will Howard.
You're right.
Howard. We haven't seen him, but again, you're not trusting in a 6th-round pick to give you starting value. So, I mean, Saints picking a quarterback almost definitely, unless Tyler Shuck proves something. Jets almost definitely. Miami almost definitely. And Cleveland, unless Shador proves something that we haven't seen. I mean, Dylan Gabriel definitely doesn't look like the answer. So that's 4 teams picking ahead of the Steelers right now inside the top 6. I wouldn't rule out the Raiders with Geno Smith. The Rams are at 11. So maybe if one quarterback's available, I mean, you got Baltimore projected at 10th. I don't think they'll be picking there. So probably pick 10 is where you'd have to trade up to. And I think if the Steelers do get decent compensatory picks, even if you have to sell a little bit from the next year, you could get up that high. The question then just becomes, like, who are you targeting? Because, like, right. Yeah, I don't know where you have the quarterbacks rated, Jeremy, but, like, right now, like, I've got Dante Moore as my QB1 right now. It's not set in stone. Like, he could very easily be overtaken. Mendoza's right there at 2. Ty Simpson's up there. Like, these are the guys that could probably all go top 10 at this point because just the demand for quarterbacks, and they've been the most clean guys this year. But then after that, you've got John Mateer as well. I think he goes first round. Even though he's been injured, he's been playing well enough. I think he deserves to get considered for first round. He's got the talent. And then the wild card is Lenora Sellers if he declares, because he's got more talent than any of these guys. He's just not ready. So I think you've got 5 guys that if those guys all declare, they go first round for sure. And then the question becomes, like, do you get a Taylon Green as a wild card? Does he come in there with the dual threat talent? I mean, he was a Heisman candidate just a few weeks ago, and he had a bad game against Notre Dame, but he's got a lot of talent. Can Sam Levitt? He started off terrible to start off the year. He's starting to resurrect himself. Does he get back into that conversation? Jade Maeva from USC. So, like, there's some guys that the last month, I think, is going to be more crucial than most years when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, because there's still a lot for these guys to prove. And some of them, it's because they've exceeded expectations, like a Mendoza or a Mateer or Simpson. And then there's other guys like, say, a Levitt, who we want to see more of what we've been seeing over the last month. We want to see it for a continued time. So I think this is one of the more critical last months of the season that we've had in a long time when it comes to evaluating the quarterbacks. Because usually you have a solidified guys that they've just been playing great all year. You have a lot of guys who've been good for part of the year. You want to see them really turn it on down the stretch, and that will determine how high they can really go. So as a Steelers fan, I think there could be options there without having to move up insanely high, but the need is going to push them up again. The ones that are deserving to go in the first round, they'll go top 10, top 12, and then you may not have another one go the rest of the round.
I was going to say it's a little different this year, or for 2026 still, than 2025. Like you're not going to have one quarterback taken and then everybody stand pat until somebody decides to trade back into the first round for the Jackson Dart of this draft. There's going to be 4 or 5 guys that go in the first round because there's 4 or 5 guys with that pedigree, right, after this year. So, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier could finish the season strong and be right back in this conversation again. I don't know about for you and for me either personally. Like, I sit back and even like somebody saying, oh, Ty Simpson, he's a guaranteed top 10 pick. I don't know how I feel about Ty Simpson. We knew nothing about Ty Simpson really going into this season until what he's shown us here. And even still, like 6'2", 208, like that doesn't work in the NFL very often, right? That's a smaller build. And maybe the game's changing a little bit. Some of these smaller build guys can get in the mix here. Dante Moore is, 6'3", 206. He's kind of that Jaden Daniels size, not as athletic, obviously, as Daniels was. But I like Mendoza a lot. Here's what I wonder, and here's where I would start. I think the Steelers need to go into this draft maybe with the thought process that the quarterback of the future is in it, but it is of the future and not of 2026. It might not be of the right now. And so you need a guy in the building that you can trust to keep things afloat, because the one difference I would say between this year and last year, or I'm sorry, this year, 2025, and next year would be that for right now, you could have gone either way with the quarterback and I'd have been fine with it. Like I was on board with getting Aaron Rodgers. I was on board with riding with Mason Rudolph. I didn't care really one way or the other. But for next year, I think it would be a disservice to the team to not have a veteran quarterback in place that you could say, we're going to try to win this year with this guy while we develop the quarterback of the future, because we have the quarterback of the future in the building now. And right now you don't have that. So that, to me, it feels like a little bit different philosophy, but I would not hate it. If Aaron Rodgers wanted to come back and he finishes out the season like he's been playing it now, I wouldn't hate him coming back to this team for one last go as the starter, mentor the young guy, let the 2 young guys, Will Howard, obviously who's on the roster, and whoever the rookie would be, kind of compete behind Rodgers and see what you got in both of those guys, and just draft to develop. What they wanted to do with Roethlisberger before Maddox got hurt, right? And then Roethlisberger got shoved into the lineup. That could happen, but I think that would be a fine philosophy. In fact, that's what I would pursue, is like, go get yourself a veteran again, whoever that would be. Probably Rodgers. If not, you'd have to go after Kyler Murray or something like that. He's going to be interesting. I'm sorry?
Malik, move for Malik.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Malik Willis, your boy Malik Willis. So I don't know what that would look like necessarily. I would say Aaron Rodgers probably. But as I sit here today, I don't want to start the first round draft pick in week 1 of 2026, no matter who it is at this point.
I agree with that. I've always been more of the persuasion it's best to have the quarterback sit. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it with several quarterbacks in the league that are the best of the best. That was good for them to sit and rest. I'll throw a hypothetical out to you. None of us think that Arch Manning is going to declare. in the event that the reports are wrong, Manning goes against, what, his family is saying, and he decides, hey, I'm declaring, because we haven't heard it from him. We've heard it from people
Right.
near him that are like, he's not doing it, but he hasn't said it himself. So I wouldn't bet on it, but there's still a possibility in the world that he could declare if he wanted to.
In fact, he pushed back on his family to a degree in one interview, saying, they don't make my choice for me. I'm making the choice, and I might. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. So
exactly. Now, I'm not saying that would be the wise thing for him to do. I think he still needs to go back. But in the event that he does come out, if he's there at 20, are you taking him?
Yeah. No, I'm trading up for him is what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'd move up in the top 10 for Arch Manning. And
wow.
Because if he declares, and we're recording this on November 6th, but if he declares, that means something went right for him over the second half of the season. And I know it was Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's been playing good football. And he looked like a man reborn against Vanderbilt. And that was not something that I had on my bingo card after the first half of the college football season. So it, like I said, when we first started this thing, it's wide open now, this quarterback competition, because the guys we thought were going to be at the top aren't there. I mean, Drew Aller's not even in this conversation anymore. And he's got a really scary future ahead of him now that he's been hurt and wasn't playing well before he got hurt. Like, what is he going to do? He doesn't have any eligibility left unless he goes as a graduate. So
he could be a 6th, 7th round draft pick, maybe even a priority free agent at this point. I would totally jump on that. But yeah, he's going to be a flyer at this point. We've seen these quarterbacks come through before that. They've got the talent, they've got the arm, but they never fully put it together, and then they get hurt. Something happens. You don't see anything more from them. And this business is, what have you done for me lately? And it's gonna hurt Aller a lot. He better be ready for the pre-draft process, because if he's not, and he can't remind people of how strong of an arm he has and all that, he has no way to resurrect his stock.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're Omar Khan. I'm Andy Weidel. We're looking at this, and we're going into free agency. I think we both agree we want to get that veteran quarterback back on the roster in some form or fashion. Would you be okay if that's Mason Rudolph, who's under contract for next year? Would you be okay with that?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. So we don't necessarily have to go out and get somebody, because we've got a guy in the building we know. And we're like, okay, we'll compete with him while we figure out through the offseason program, while we figure out the draft here. See what your development is. We're still going to draft a guy, right? Will Howard doesn't preclude us from drafting a guy at this point. And even if we decided that it was in our best interest with the guys that we have and the age that they are, to go out and get a Kyler Murray or bring back an Aaron Rodgers or something like that, that doesn't preclude us from drafting the quarterback either, because neither one of those guys is a long-term solution, in my opinion. And so I think veteran quarterback, we're going to trade up into the top 10 to draft somebody, but we want to keep some picks, right? We want to keep some picks in 2026. We want to get a part of this wide receiver class that's coming out. It's looking pretty good. It's going to be fun. We might want to get some help in the secondary. We want to get some help along the defensive front again, and get a little cheaper on that side of the ball now as we look to move ahead with some guys. So we might even have to start looking at left tackle again if we don't decide to pick up the 5th-year option on Broderick Jones. I think I would do that, by the way. $19 million a year for a year, Broderick Jones, I'd be fine with that.
Yes.
And give him one more year to develop at the position that we thought we were drafting him for in the first place.
I agree.
So is that kind of your thought process too? Like, we want to trade up for the quarterback. I'd be more willing to dip into 2027 than give up all my haul of picks in the first 2 days in this draft to go get the quarterback. What say you?
It would come up to conviction, how strong you think this class is compared to next year's, but also the quarterback class. Like, I think if there's a quarterback you have conviction on, you get them. I say do a triple M room. You got Mason, Malik, Manning, Mason, Malik, Maeva, Mason, Malik, Mateer, Mason, Malik, Manning. I mean, you got plenty of options here to make a three.
Mason, Malik,
Mendoza. Yes, Mendoza. That was the one I was forgetting. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got plenty of options here to make this happen. But I mean, I think that's a great opportunity because you have the stability guy in Mason who knows the system. You have the what's behind door number 2 guy in Malik, who's seemed to have revived his career, at least to a little extent in Green Bay. I mean, when he's been called upon in Green Bay, he's been very good. He's won them a couple games. So I think he deserves a shot somewhere else. I mean, he was never given a chance in Tennessee. So let's see what happens if we give him a chance. And I mean, the Steelers, at least Mike Tomlin, seemed to like him. I don't think it was all smoke. It may have been some, but I don't think it was all smoke. I think there was definitely some love in the building for Malik Willis. So bring him in, and then you've got a developmental guy, and then that also gives you the flexibility. You've got 2 different play styles. You can bring in a pocket passer like Mendoza, who's going to get a glimpse of Rudolph and be able to glean from that. Or you can get a running quarterback like Sellers, who's a bigger version of Malik. Or you get someone who has, more of a running style, Dante Moore, whatever the case may be. And he can learn that dual threat ability through Malik, but 2 guys who have been in the league for a little while now and have learned the ropes in a couple different systems. Both of them have spent time in Tennessee. I don't know what good that does them, but it's something in common there. So I think that's the way you go. You get a cheap vet if it's a guy like Malik. If not, you just stick with Mason, save as much money as you can, and then you get the guy. If that means trading a little bit into next year, that's fine. But I'm still more of the mindset, don't mortgage future picks. If you can fill some of your other things in free agency with some guys, maybe not elite guys, but the Steelers for years have done, like small free agent acquisitions that will fit just enough. So that would be my philosophy. Patch the holes you can in free agency. If you have a couple leftover picks, great. But I'd be looking to trade up into that 10 to 12 area if one of these quarterbacks is still there. Count the cost, but if you got conviction, pull the trigger on one.
I think where you can really find help in free agency is on defense. You can't find free agent help on offense very much anymore. You just can't do it, except for maybe running back, right? Running backs tend to hit the market because you go after the 4th, 5th round pick that
you don't want to pay free agent running back.
Right, exactly. You don't want to do that either. But like in the secondary, I can look at the available free agents next year and find a couple guys in the secondary I'd want like right now. Amik Robertson from Detroit. Like I'd go sign that contract if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? This next year, shore up my cornerback room. You've got guys like Kyer Elam. If you wanted to give him another shot, he's still only 25 years old. Greg Newsome's going to be a free agent again, after that trade.
He'd be an interesting name.
Yeah, very intriguing. So Jeff Okudah from Minnesota, who's played a little bit better over the last couple of years. There's some guys there where it's like, get them on your roster and help shore up a position of need, but don't break the bank on it. And then draft your playmakers, draft your wide receivers, right? The Steelers do a good job with the wide receiver position. Maybe reevaluate the left side of the offensive line. You're probably going to need a guard, right? You're going to need a guard at some point in free agency, and no better place to get good guard help than in free agency, in my opinion. You can get them cheap usually, and it might be worth it to maybe spend a little bit more there while you get a little cheaper on defense with some of the draft picks that you've made over the last few years. So there's options. There's a lot going on here, and the Steelers have a way to do this, I think, that they can keep everybody happy. They can keep the people who want them to compete happy, and they can keep the people like us who I think I would have been fine with a mini teardown to the degree where you're kind of resetting for the future here because things have gotten old and stale. But that comes to the big question, Andrew, and I think we're in lockstep on this. It's like, I love Mike Tomlin. I appreciate everything he's done for this organization. I think like maybe he even deserves a chance to try again at quarterback with a real franchise guy, but I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I don't think you fire him in season at all. I think you give him all of this year. And I think you do so with like real honor for what he's done and an understanding that this is one of the best coaches in NFL history, just for what he's accomplished, what he did for your organization. You won a Super Bowl with him. You were a competitive team every year under him. But the NFL future waits for no man, and Mike Tomlin thinks it does. And I just don't know if that can work moving forward. So you've got a modern thinking general manager, a modern thinking personnel office now. I think you need a modern thinking, modern philosophy at the head coach spot too. And again, I'm not one of these fire Tomlin right now guys, but if I'm looking at a rebuild at the game's most important position, or a reset, I should say, at the game's most important position, then I would prefer the guy drafting and developing my next quarterback to not be Mike Tomlin personally. What say you though to that?
I agree. I think there's not a strong pool of bona fide head coaching candidates out there. It's not like there's a Ben Johnson out there this year that everyone's like, oh man, we've got to get him. But I am still the persuasion that Joe Brady would be a good head coach somewhere. I mean, I still consider him one of the best offensive minds in football. And considering the fact that he's made Buffalo's offense, I know Josh Allen helps, but consistently we never talk about Buffalo as one of the best rushing offenses in football, but he has turned James Cook into one of the best running backs in football. He has turned a wide receiver room that has no wide receiver one into a productive room with Khalil Shakir and other guys. He's turned Dalton Kincaid's career around that did not look promising his first year. I mean, he's done a lot of things with just a bunch of little pieces. And I mean, yeah, again, a lot of it is due to Josh Allen, but Josh Allen was even struggling before Joe Brady came in with the turnovers. He got those turnover numbers down, helped him rely on the run, and it took the pressure off Allen and allowed Allen to just improvise and be himself. So I would still be of the mindset. I think Joe Brady would be an ideal candidate. And there's a couple other names out there, but I don't even think it has to be an offensive-minded coach necessarily.
Right.
It's got, I mean, Dan Campbell is not an offensive guru. He's an offensive-minded coach, but he is even I think he would probably even tell you that defense still wins championships. Like he is through and through a big believer in defense, even though he's an offensive mind. Is whether you have an offensive or defensive coach, that coach has to have enough respect that the other side of the ball matters too. And you have to have a balanced approach, especially, if you're going the mindset of defense. So that's where I would come in. I'm of the mindset I'm okay with moving on from Tomlin. I'm willing to take that risk. You could be worse, but the worst spot in the NFL is being in the middle. The Steelers have been there too long. Yeah,
I mean, it's scary, right? I'm not saying it's an easy choice. And I'm not saying it would end up being the right choice necessarily, but I look across the league, and when you look at organizations that consistently fail, they do not sync up their leadership with their player personnel. They don't sync that up. They're the Bears, right? That keep the coach, but draft the first round quarterback, even though you don't think the coach is going to be the long-term guy. And you say, well, let's give him one more shot with a real quarterback. The quarterback stinks under him, and you end up firing him at the end of that season. And now you're resetting with the guy, and you're lucky that Ben Johnson wants to go to you, because I don't know if I don't know too many coaches I'm pretty comfortable saying this. Been a believer in Caleb Williams, but I don't know too many coaches who are going to train some of the bad habits out of him like Ben Johnson's been able to do so far this season. So I look at the Jets, right? They do this crap all the time where they're like bringing in quarterbacks and then firing coaches because the quarterback didn't work for that coach, and then bringing in a new coach and that quarterback still doesn't work. So then they get rid of the quarterback, and then they, because it's not the coach's guy, and it's just this vicious cycle. The Browns do this all the time. You don't want to be a part of that. You don't. And I'm not saying I think Mike Tomlin's a little bit different, but at the same time, if Mediocreville is where you want to stay and the next quarterback comes in and you stay in Mediocreville, then what are you doing for his full-on growth and development in an NFL that has changed? And So I think that the Steelers, again, I agree with you. I don't think you necessarily have to have the offensive-minded head coach, but I think you need to have a more modern philosophy in how you build football teams than what Mike Tomlin does. So I don't know. It's a between a rock and a hard place for Steelers Nation and for the organization. But it might be the tough conversation that needs to be had.
The Steelers fans wouldn't really like this either, but Kevin Stefanski would be an interesting name if the Browns do end up parting ways with him. I know you may not be on board with that.
No,
but
not.
I'm glad that the Browns have stuck with a coach as long as they've had, but they have still done absolutely nothing to give him the pieces that he needs in order to win. They've given him nothing on offense to work with. I mean, They gave him an offensive line, and they gave him some
Deshaun Watson.
That was a mistake from the beginning.
Again, the process was wrong. I mean, the process was horrible there.
Kevin Stefanski, you look at every quarterback that he's had, has got to be a guy that can place him under center. You place him under center, you live off that play action. Deshaun Watson, from his time in college, had only spent like 5 snaps under center. Like, he is never an under center quarterback, and the two never meshed together. Not the right play style, but I think that goes back to play style quarterback that you're going after. If you're bringing in a Fernando Mendoza, who's going to be more of a pocket-type passer, Kevin Stefanski makes a lot more sense than if you're bringing in a guy like Lenoris Sellers, or for instance, or someone like that, or maybe even a Dante Moore. I think Dante Moore would not be a good mesh for a guy like Stefanski, but I think there are guys that fix. In terms of leadership, Stefanski's a leader, and he does earn the players' respect. But I mean, he's got nothing to quarterback. Dylan Gabriel, what were the Browns thinking taking him in the 3rd round? I mean, he has been an absolute nightmare. Looks terrible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was not high on Dylan Gabriel.
I don't think
I hated this quarterback class outside of Cam Ward. I really did. I was not a fan of anybody. I liked the Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis draft class better than I like this last one for anybody but Cam Ward. Like, Cam Ward was in his own tier. And again, the Titans are a perfect example of what we're talking about here. The Brian Callahan's gone already. I mean, he's gone already. And Cam Ward couldn't save them. And he still can't save them because they're so bad everywhere else. You don't want to be that if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we say all this. Oh, go ahead. You're going to say that.
The very least that the Steelers could do this offseason, the very least, even if they decide to forgo on quarterback in the draft, would be to throw out an offer to Indy for Anthony Richardson. It's not going to be much.
They should have done that already, in my opinion.
Yes.
He should be on the team already.
100%.
I tweeted that after it became clear that Daniel Jones was the guy in Indianapolis, and I said Steelers should bring in Anthony Richardson, and I got roasted on Twitter for that, and I was like, why
Twitter.
not? It makes perfect sense. Yeah, get off Twitter. I should. Let's see. Okay. Where I was going to go from here is we can talk about this, like what we would do. Steelers aren't moving on from Mike Tomlin after this year. He's here. Arthur Smith is probably staying. The front office is intact, and I'm fine with the front office. I feel good about the front office.
Yep.
They're going to give him another shot. So with that in play here, the 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, look like this. And I think that this is something I can live with. I think it's Mike Tomlin. I think it's Arthur Smith. I think it's another season of Aaron Rodgers. I really do. I think he's going to come back. I think he's having fun. I think he likes playing for a good organization again. I think he likes playing for Mike Tomlin. And I think he comes back for another year. I think that the quarterback sitting behind Aaron Rodgers is a guy that the Steelers snuck into the top 15 for, maybe even at this point, maybe not even the top 10. Maybe it's one of these guys like, didn't Patrick Mahomes go 15th overall, or did he go? Oh, he went 10th. Okay. So he was a top 10 quarterback. Justin Fields went 11, right? That same year. Is that what that was?
No, Fields was a different year. Fields was 2019. Mahomes was 2017.
Okay. Was That was the Baker draft. Baker and Trubisky and
No, Baker
Mahomes.
was no.
I'm all confused.
Trubisky was 17. You had Trubisky, you had Watson, you had Mahomes, and you had Paxton Lynch. And then you had 2018 was the year of Baker, Lamar, Darnold, Josh Rosen, and you had that group. And Josh Allen was in that one as well. And then 2019 was when you had – I'm sorry?
No, you're good. Keep going.
Okay, so 2019 actually would have been the Haskins year. That was the year you had Dwayne Haskins. Right. You had Drew Lock in that draft class. So that was the class they had because you had Drew Lock ended up falling to day 2, kind of by surprise. He ends up dropping. It was the 20. Hang on for a second.
Yeah,
playing with me now.
You're good because 2017 was Myles Garrett going number 1 overall.
Yes, that is correct. He would have been. Yeah. So high school, college, 2018. So 2019, 2020 played for Ohio State. So it would have been the 2021 draft when Fields came out. That was the 2021 draft that he was out because 2020 was the year of Tua, Burrow, Herbert, Love.
Right. Okay. So if the Steelers got into like the top 12 to get their quarterback and they were committed to developing and not to starting right away, I'd be fine with that. Something along those lines. Because I do think that with the competition that they're going to have, 4 quarterbacks this year, that they're not going to get the number 1 quarterback in this draft. That's just not going to happen. No. They're not going to be able to get up to number 1. And the team that's picking number 1, most likely the Saints, they're probably not going to move out of that spot to give you the quarterback anyway. They're going to take him. So the Steelers have some competition here to try to figure out. And what I want to say, though, is that when I look at what the Steelers could be next year, they could be a team that has filled a lot of roster holes for maybe an even better attempt at a final run under Aaron Rodgers, right, in 2026, with a little bit more filled out roster, but they have the quarterback of the future growing and developing behind the scenes, and that makes me feel really good about the future of the team. And even if Mike Tomlin is there, if this Arthur Smith experiment keeps going well, which it has so far, and it's funky, it's different, it's not traditional, or it's not necessarily modern NFL offense. It's just a wacky NFL offense is what it is. So maybe you move on from Terrell Austin, you figure out the defensive side as far as coordinator can come in and modernize things a little bit for Tomlin. If he's willing to show some of those types of things, then maybe I am willing to give him one last crack at this for 2 or 3 more years. But the Steelers have a lot to figure out. So just a very interesting case study here, Andrew, and your final thoughts on it as we get ready to go.
It's going to be fluid, so just keep an eye out on some of these premier games. There's still a lot of big games on the schedule that are going to matter. I mean, LSU still has a very talented defense. Like, Ty Simpson's got another chance to prove himself in the spotlight this week. Like, there's still a number of pieces. I know LSU hasn't had the season they wanted, but this is still a good game for Ty Simpson just to continue to add to his draft stock. Taylon Green still, I think he's got the most room to be able to move up on the draft boards because of the size and the speed and the talent that he has. He's just got to be more consistent, not turning the football over. So I think there's a lot of upside guys in this class. You got some potential franchise guys, but you've got to be more consistent and show more development. So this is going to go all the way through January when players have to decide whether they're declaring or not. Like, it's going to be an interesting class to watch, not just for the Steelers, but across the entire league.
It really is. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's not what we expected, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it doesn't help. We mentioned the free agency class. That's only going to drive the price up for these other quarterbacks. When you got a free agency class, a quarterback that's drier than Tom Brady's commentating. I mean, it's just like that.
Good stuff. There's going to be a couple guys who are highly paid quarterbacks that could be on the move this offseason, that via trade could become available via trade. Dak Prescott comes to mind. Kyler Murray, and we already had his discussion. So there's going to be some guys enter into this mix a little bit here. Whatever the Rams do is going to be interesting too. Are they going to ride one more year with Matthew Stafford after this year? Or are they going to try to trade him? We'll see. There's some interesting conversations to be had.
Stafford retire.
Or will he retire? Yes. There's a lot of different ways to think about all of this coming together. So fluid is a great word for it. So I think that the Steelers would behoove the Steelers to play it by ear and to be light on their feet, to borrow a Mike Tomlin expression there. And legitimately, not just, we don't live in our fears, but we actually do, be light on your feet and actually be light on your feet for all of this. So, all right. Good stuff, Andrew. Thanks for joining me. You got mock drafts coming up here soon?
Beginning of December, we'll start looking at that. Usually my first one comes out around Christmas. I feel like I need to move it up because ESPN keeps moving all theirs up insanely. By the way, interesting thing, if those of you listening have not listened to Todd McShay talking about him and his relationship with Mel Kiper, very interesting. If you go to Todd McShay's YouTube channel, he has McShay Show. You go out and listen to that. It's very interesting what he had said about, why – they haven't been, talking at all. I thought it was a really interesting clip. So make sure you go and check that out.
I will check that out. All right. Good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. All the listeners, go subscribe to FFSN. Like this. I think you probably have I can't remember what it is on like Apple Podcasts, but I think you have a way to follow the channel where you get this podcast. And then obviously it's on YouTube as well. So check that out. Stay tuned for more from FFSN. Check out our work on the Steel Curtain Network with the Steelers Fix. I do the Steelers Q&A if you're a Steelers fan on Saturday nights before the Sunday weekend action. So check all that out and stay tuned for more. We'll have more for you. Until next time, keep drafting, everybody.